to see the early returns where they are at 63%, that's very encouraging. It's a clear mandate thus far. It's always a tough road to get to 66, so we'll see how these numbers continue. But the early returns are very encouraging, and San Diegans have said overwhelmingly, we want these priorities.
And the question is overwhelmingly enough? While the vast majority of the races we covered on election night will ultimately head to a runoff in November, the ballot measures will not. We pretty much have one shot at ballot measures each election, and when it comes to taxation and some bond measures, the future isn't clear. The question I have is why, and why do some appear to be missing the mark? Well, thankfully I have the perfect guest to help explain it all and help join me now. Haney Hong, President and CEO of the nonpartisan San Diego County Taxpayers Association. Haney, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so I want to start big picture, right? It seems like a lot of bond selling or tax measures didn't do super well this week at the ballot box. What's your perspective on how San Diegans and Californians are feeling about these types of measures?
I think we saw on Super Tuesday something that is very rare in politics. Taxpayers took a stand. I think that taxpayers are rightfully kind of hesitant to say, we are in a great economy today. What is it that the state needs? Why do we need more money for continued problems? Right now, with how things are going with the economy, COVID-19 notwithstanding,
right, of course.
Right, the state should have plenty of money to make the schools shiny. So I think folks are, folks are rightfully doubtful.
So let's start. You mentioned schools, of course. The big headliner, statewide ballot measure, Prop 19. Prop 13, which would allow the state to sell bonds to fund school projects. Governor stumped for it in the last days before the primary. It seems now destined for defeat. Again, a lot of vote out, but it seems at this point that's not doing well. What happened there?
That's right. So you're right that a lot of folks stumped for this. There was a huge campaign for it. But right now, the no vote is about 10 points ahead. And I know that technically they could still squeak by, but very, very unlikely.
That's a high bar.
Very, very high bar.
But again, what is the idea? You said the schools should be shiny. I mean, usually school bond measures are pretty positive.
Yeah, it's easy for folks to say when they see the ballot, okay, I should vote for something related to education because it helps our kids, it helps my kids. But I think that, again, folks are, now we're at the place where we're saying things are great. You keep asking for money, government. What we need now is not more money. We need good leadership and management of the taxpayer dollars we've already put into the kitty. We should see good performance out of government with how the economy is today.
Okay, so here's the one locally that I really want to get your perspective on. Measure C. Huge local measure right here, the measure that helped, of course, expand the convention center, also put money for homelessness, also put money for repairing roads. Taxpayer Association, you guys backed this, correct?
Correct. You don't...
I was going to say, you don't see that every day.
You wouldn't expect the Taxpayers Association to necessarily support a tax increase, but I think we recognize that there are areas of investment that the region needs, homelessness, for instance, being one of them. We offered our support because we looked at what are the requirements on performance audits and plans and all the kinds of leadership and management pieces that we think are so critical to when we use taxpayer dollars. Again, this is I think the lesson from Super Tuesday. People want to see performance out of the taxpayer dollars that we all put in.
Well, and to that point, again, Measure C, I mean, it is right there. Late last week, 64%. I mean, we are right at that cusp. Do you think it's going to go over that 66 mark?
I'm not the best political prognosticator, but I think it's a very high mark to meet. We'll see what happens when your previous guest finishes all the counting.
Right, exactly. When Michael Vu finishes, then we'll have a clear answer. But I guess just on that Measure C, I mean, does that signal to you, again, that voters, I'm looking at larger trends, that voters are hesitant? I mean, that wasn't even a tax for San Diegans necessarily. It was about tourists being taxed, and yet still might not hit that mark.
I think that what you pointed out here with the mayor saying that 2/3, it is a high mark. Can you get two people in your family to agree on something, right? Like dinner.
Right.
I mean, 2 out of 3 is hard to get to. But I think it's also important that where folks are on these kinds of measures is an indication of where San Diego wants to prioritize.
Last thing, measures A and B. Both about similar larger issues, about ballot box land planning, basically. Both seem like they're not going to make it at this point. your perspective on those sorts of decisions.
I'm so glad you're asking about Measure A in particular, and Measure B is related for the same reason, but we took a strong position of opposition on Measure A. We wanted to say no on A because at the end of the day, these are land use decisions are very complicated, and our ballots are already complex, and we pay as taxpayers for staffs, and frankly, we pay for our elected leaders to make some of these complex decisions with the advice of professionals. We don't want to put that at the ballot box, and then ultimately for you and me as people who have an expensive quality of life already in San Diego,
Sure.
It's going to slow down housing, and slowing down housing is just going to make housing more expensive for all of us.
Haney, thank you so much for your insight. I appreciate it. We'll have you on again soon. Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.